After 2 years of Israeli bombardments and more than 65,000 people killed, peace could finally be coming to Gaza. But with international outside parties coordinating the plans, what say will the people of Gaza have in their future? Hello and welcome to a special edition of Roundtable from Istanbul. I'm Enda Brady. There is hope after 2 deadly years of war in Gaza that peace could finally be coming to the people there. But what will this agreement look like? What will it entail? And crucially, how can it be enforced? Well, to answer that and more, let's meet our panel here in Istanbul. I'm delighted to say we have with us Sultan Barakat. Sultan is a professor of public policy at Hamad Ben Khalifa University in Doha. He's also a senior associate fellow at RUSI, the Royal United Services Institute. Alanna O'Malley is a professor of global governance and wealth. That's at Erasmus University in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. And we also have with us Hassan Ben Imran. Hassan is a legal advisor for law for Palestine. You're all very welcome to this roundtable. Hassan, to you first of all, how concerned are you that the future of Gaza appears to have been taken out of the hands of the people of Gaza?
And now we're talking about 2 years since the beginning of the genocide. What we're hearing in the news is not a peace deal, is not a peace negotiation. It's more like an imposition. No one is interested to hear the voices of Gaza because no one is interested about talking about peace. They're interested about talking about ending this, which is very different than peace and which is very different than what Gazans want. Let go of what they deserve. 2 years into the war, now we're quite clear that Israel won't stop. It's not Netanyahu, it's the institution of the state itself won't stop until the founding values of Zionism are achieved, which is simply the unmaking of Palestine. That's the end goal. That has been made very clear by several ministers of the Israeli government. We're not talking about the Palestinian discourse right here, or let's say the pro-Palestine discourse. We're just talking about what the Israeli government is talking. Israel has been very honest with us. Netanyahu has been very honest with us. It's just we don't want to listen. This is not about a peace deal. This is about an imposition against the Palestinians to unmake what has been left of Palestine.
Alanna, just come in on that phrase Hassan just used, the unmaking of Palestine. We've seen this carried out every day for 2 years now, the unmaking of Palestine. Do you think that is what this was all about?
Well, actually, we've seen the unmaking of Palestine being carried out for a lot longer than 2 years. If we think about the longer history of the ways in which the Israeli state has both prosecuted the people in the occupied territories, but also in the Gaza Strip. And so this is extremely concerning because a lot of the situation has arisen from the disenfranchisement of the Palestinian people from their homeland, from their sovereignty, from their right to self-determination. And the peace deal that's being proposed neither takes account of their opinion or of their needs in a settlement. And actually what it does is further disenfranchise them from being able to be part of any peace settlement and being part of the solution. So I think that Hassan is absolutely right in his phrasing of this as being imposed. And I think the problem is that, as we have seen before, when you impose solutions, even if the short-term gains would be positive, which we hope that they would be in this case with a cessation of hostilities, then the problem is that you're baking in the conflict for longer by continuing the alienation and the disenfranchisement and basically the isolation of the Palestinian people from their rights and further denying them the chance to have their rights fulfilled, whether that's by an international peace settlement, the international community or the international system. So this is a very worrying development from the point of view of their agency.
Sultan, just come in on that, the imposition of this plan. How concerned are you that the people of Gaza have not been consulted and others have worked this out clearly for a long time?
Well, clearly it's a major problem with it's not a plan, let me just clarify. This is what we have now, our set of principles. And there used to be 21 a few days ago, then they came down to 20, because only one of them has been turned into an implemented plan, and that was the apology to Qatar. Everything else that has been discussed so far does not lead to a clear political horizon for the Palestinians. And it's not the first time the Palestinians are left out, particularly in Gaza. Every time there's been a conflict, there was a reconstruction attempt, the Palestinians were left out. And I think obviously everyone knows that this is not going to lead to the implementation of any ideas. But for now, it is going to help release the hostages. And the objective is really focused on this. The whole thing is being designed to give the impression that there is an agreement, everybody is going in the same direction until the release of the hostages. Then I think you will face the real challenge of what's going on and whether there is a plan, whether there is a scope for the Palestinians to take part in this or not. And I doubt it. I think we have not really seen the end of won't see the end of the conflict anytime soon. Netanyahu will not allow this war to stop, to end, short of achieving his three main objectives. One of them was the hostages, but he's also determined to totally destroy Hamas, which is not going to be easy to do on his own. And of course, he's determined to have his authority across the region spread. And that is another obstacle for him at the moment.
Thank you, Sultan. Hassan, just on the mention of Netanyahu there, his fate is inextricably linked to the war in Gaza, because as soon as it ends, there will be the resumption of the corruption trial in Israel against him, presumably. So one man has driven this for the last 2 years.
It's not just... See, I wouldn't call it that way, to be honest with you. This is not about Netanyahu. I think the day will come when Netanyahu is going to appear as the moderate face of Israeli political mainstream. You're talking about other ministers who are maintaining the government of Netanyahu that have a much uglier version for events to unfold.
Ben Gvir and Smotrich.
Ben Gvir and Smotrich and others as well, who are yet to come. From the Knesset, you can see their rising voices as well. So this is not per se about Netanyahu, linking his political future to this. Netanyahu will step down, he will be arrested, or he might just die. That does not end the course of events. We're witnessing a very similar moment. You know, if I can borrow a moment from history to describe what's happening right here. Back in 1938, when Hitler took part of Czechoslovakia, what was the European response back then? Appeasement. You know, let's calm them down, let's give them this and this will be over. Let's give them Gaza in that sense and this will be over. What did we end up with? 45 million people killed in the Second World War. Netanyahu and Israel, and this is way bigger than Netanyahu, is bombing 6 or 7 states. Tunisia, which has nothing to do with this, the Sumud flotilla right there. Qatar, which is the peace negotiation, basically moderating the peace talks, so-called peace talks. Bombing Gaza, of course, different parts of Palestine, Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
We're talking about something that is way bigger than a personal vision right here. It's not about Netanyahu. This is way bigger than him. Netanyahu might step down. This does not mean that it's going to be the end of what's happening right now.
Thanks, Hassan. Alanna, to you, how do you think history will look back on the past 2 years?
There's a terrible historical irony at play here, in that the Jewish state was founded as a way to respond to the inhumanity that the Jewish people suffered during the Second World War, and now the leaders of Israel have perpetrated a genocide in their name, and so there's a terrible kind of historical irony on the other side of the equation, and what we have from the wider sense of this perspective is also other states who have suffered apartheid, such as South Africa, who are in solidarity with the Palestinians because they themselves have been either disenfranchised or ignored by the international community. They have suffered themselves through genocide, through betrayal, and through all kinds of discrimination. And they're the countries that are really, or have been leading the crusade to try to raise this issue continually, especially within the international system. We see that represented very well in the cases against Israel at the International Court of Justice, led of course by South Africa, but also by many other global South states. And so the historical ironies are not just limited to the great contrast between the founding of the Israeli state and what the Israeli state is perpetrating now against the Palestinians, but also the broader historical patterns of the ways in which the solidarity, the pressure around this question is coming from countries for whom the international system has not been useful, has not served, has not saved. And so there's a very interesting historical turning point here, and I think unfortunately it's going to be one of those moments that historians look back on and wonder, why was not more done? Why did we not learn clearer lessons from history? I mean, the irony of the parallel with the outbreak of World War II is interesting, and there are many others when we think about how we deal with power politics, how we deal with big men leaders, authoritarian figures like Netanyahu, and why the international community has not got the facilities and the systems to respond effectively when such indications of genocide and such hostilities have borne out in such a way as they have. So there'll be a lot of questions to be answered in the future, unfortunately.
Thanks, Alanna. Sultan, to you, that word that Hassan used, appeasement, history shows us that it never works. Are you concerned that what we're seeing now is the international community appeasing Netanyahu, appeasing Israel, and they won't stop?
Yes, but it's not just appeasement. There is the feeling of guilt in Europe to do with the Holocaust. And I think many leaders find it appropriate that they turn a blind eye to the Palestinian suffering because they fear the backlash if they were seen to be standing up to the Israelis. But just I think the important point here, the last 2 years have really robbed Israel of all its legitimacy. And this is a very important point to stress throughout. It has exposed Israel for what it is. It has highlighted the danger of occupation, the fact that occupation is unsustainable. The occupation has really corrupted the very spirit of the Israeli society that was racially driven out of fear from persecution, wanting freedom, etc., etc. It really showed the world the cost of occupation, both in Gaza and in the West Bank. And I think 7th of October had to happen. It could not have been avoided. It was going to happen, whether it happened on the 7th of October, 7th of November, next year, a year after. It's inevitable. People are not going to tolerate in the 21st century to live under these circumstances, particularly with the advances of communication. When Israel first occupied those territories, very little knowledge was around the world about the subject, and even amongst the Palestinians, neighborhoods and villages did not know what was going on next door and so on. Now we live in a very different world. The connectivity is very, very high, and the expectations around the world, because of the global challenges that we're facing, all of us, be it climate, migration, etc., people are expecting minimum standard of ethical, if you like, policy around the world. And Israel has thrown all of that out of the window. And what is very sad is the United States has blindly supported Israel.
And let them do it.
And let them get away with it. And with that, we lost the leadership that everybody was hoping for in this very challenging circumstances we live today.
Thank you, Sultan. Hassan, talk to me about the damage to Israel's reputation internationally over the last 2 years. We're now seeing countries don't want to play them in sport. The Eurovision Song Contest, countries don't even want to appear on the same stage as Israeli performers. They've trashed their reputation, haven't they?
They have, because this goes way deeper than political calculations for them. The first Prime Minister of Israel, Ben Gurion, is quoted that he once said that Israel's existence comes before its reputation or its image. I don't think Israel's existence is at stake right here. I think it's a geopolitical joke to mention that Israel is facing any existential threat. However, the Israeli mainstream thinking right now seems to believe that international community does not matter, international norms, international law do not matter. Yes, this is affecting the state of events, like let's say the support now you can see in Barcelona, in Madrid, in different capitals, the support is massive, but Israel knows deep down that it has got the support of the United States. So as long as this is only about sweet talk, it's going to remain as sweet talk. This, if you let me just go back to history, at one moment in history, in 1939, that's when the British Empire issued the white paper promising the Palestinian groups a state for all its citizens, for Muslims, Christians, and Jews in Palestine. The same time that the promise was issued to put down the revolution back then, the Palestinians were being disarmed by the British Empire, and the Zionist militias at that time were being armed by the British Empire, and they fought alongside the British Empire. And that ended up in the Nakba, the first attempt to unmake Palestine in 1948. This is quite similar. Now we're talking about political speech. Keir Starmer promised us a recognition like a few months ago, and he linked it with the ending of the genocide. The genocide did not end. He recognized the Palestinian state. All right, then what? Where are the sanctions? How do we stop this? Do we keep appeasing? The only way is sanctions. Otherwise, it's all sweet talk. The street is boiling in Europe. I can see that. In North America, it's boiling. Around the world, it's boiling. But the establishment does not seem to care.
Alanna, talk to me about the job now of reconstructing Gaza. How huge a task has the international community got on its hands here?
Well, it's almost an insurmountable task when we consider the level of destruction that the Gaza Strip has suffered through. And of course, there are different levels in this. There is the immediate help for the people who are still there in terms of supply of food and medical aid, and then the basic conditions of life that must be provided to them. And then there are the wider tasks, right? So the political settlement, what does that look like? How will that ensure peace for them and kind of an ability to go about their daily lives? And then there is the physical part, the infrastructural reconstruction and all of the different elements that will take place as part of that. So the question really for the international community, for the UN is, can they build back productive relationships with the Israeli government and with the Palestinian authorities in order to be able to move in quickly to take care of some of these elements? So it's the next step from peace is how you guarantee the peace and who's going to pay for it. And that I don't see as part of the current, at least the public discussions right now.
Thanks, Alanna. Sultan, we spoke about the reputation of Israel being so badly damaged by its own hand over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
What about Netanyahu? What do you think happens to him next?
Well, clearly he's very concerned about the ICC case in particular, and to have a warrant for his arrest and as a war criminal. And he has made it a condition for the Palestinians, for them to move forward into any peace deal, they need to drop the case. But he doesn't understand, it's not about the Palestinians, this is about the humanity, this is about the global community deciding that he's a war criminal and he's got to go through it. But if you allow me to go back to the issue of reconstruction, I think the most important points that came up so far is the collective agreement that the Palestinians should not be forced out of Gaza. But in fact, the situation on the ground may lead to them voluntarily deciding to leave Gaza because of the circumstances. The other important issue is the idea of having some kind of force introduced into Gaza. The problem with that is what's been talked about at the moment is a security stabilization force, one that takes Israel's security as the most important objective, which is the problem with all the previous reconstruction attempts in Gaza. Time has come to shift the discussion to the welfare of the Palestinians. And if anything, if we are to provide, the international community were to provide some support, it needs to be in the form of a protection force rather than a stabilization force.
Thanks,
for
Sultan.
the society.
Just on that point, Hassan, come in on peacekeeping then. What would you like to see happen and what do you think actually will happen?
I think these are two different things, unfortunately, what I would like and what seems to be going to happen right now. What I would like to see right now is something that is something that makes peace plausible. Peace right now is unless you're talking about non-violence, absence of violence, that's possible. You exterminate the Palestinians. That's Netanyahu's vision for peace. But that's not peace. If we are talking about peace right now, the only way to push for it is to make peace something that the Israelis have to choose. That's the only way. How do we do that? We have experience from not far back in history, South Africa. South Africa was supported by the United States. The apartheid regime in South Africa was supported particularly by the United Kingdom as well, and several other European countries who refused to give up on the apartheid regime and the connection. However, following the advisor opinion from the ICJ, the Namibia and advisor opinion and others, the pressure kept mounting on the apartheid regime in South Africa. They were isolated. South Africa was expelled from the United Nations. The Security Council refused to do that. So we heard of the Bouteflika ruling, which was activated in the United Nations General Assembly, where the Israeli diplomats were no longer allowed to enter the United Nations premises, which is basically like expelling them from the United Nations. South Africa was expelled from sporting events, from cultural events. So what I'm talking about right here is sanctions and boycott. It seems quite far away right now with the American support and with certain European support towards that. But now we're witnessing some changes. Spain, Ireland are talking about boycotting Eurovision, for instance.
And others, Netherlands as well.
The Netherlands as well, exactly.
Yeah, very significant.
UEFA, it matters to Israel. Playing in European sporting events matters to Israel. Playing in the World Cup, for instance, matters to Israel. Pressuring Israel through the different fora will create a reason for them to think of peace. Otherwise...
Alanna, I want to bring in the name of Tony Blair, who has been much touted in recent weeks as a so-called governor of Gaza. Just your reaction, how the Muslim world will view him given his legacy and the war in Iraq?
Well, look, Tony Blair, even outside the Muslim world, but particularly within it, is regarded as somebody who led an illegal war, who failed to get Security Council resolution to legitimise the invasion of Iraq, and who killed hundreds of thousands of people as part of that illegal war. And the very kind of terms of his proposed interaction as part of this peace settlement really speaks of this kind of idea of trusteeship, or the mandate system from the League of Nations, which we know after 100 years of dealing with the legacy of those institutions in some ways, actually bakes in the conflict into these kinds of settlements. So the idea of Tony Blair, who may or may not be well regarded as a statesman in Europe, depending on who you talk to, I think has very little real legitimacy in the Muslim world. And also, more broadly, what this represents is, again, the imposition of a Western statesman with a very dubious record historically in that region being imposed on people for whom he has never served a purpose. So I don't think that this really brings incredible legitimacy or credibility to anything he might be involved with.
Thanks, Alanna. Sultan, to you, talk to me about President Trump. What happens from here? We know he is desperate to win a Nobel Peace Prize. He has been nominated by Netanyahu, of all people. Do you think this is now even feasible?
Well, my personal opinion, it's a joke, to be honest. I mean, we have reached the bottom of politics and morals in this world. The whole discussion about the Nobel Peace Prize being the motivation to stop the murdering of thousands of people is in itself upsetting. But having said that, I think Trump is now in a position where he has had deep conversations with the Arab and Muslim states. And I think he understands a little bit better the need to balance the outcome between Israel and the rest of the world. And he appreciates the isolation that Israel has reached. This is why he keeps now continually talking about his ability to bring Israel back into the international community. But at the same time, he can't get out of, he can't break away from the grip of the Israeli lobby in Washington. And this is like a fact, for some reason or another, they are dictating his next steps. Every now and then he stands up to Netanyahu in a small way, but even when he does it in a way that is designed specifically to appease the wider Israeli society. And I think he's playing a very dangerous game in the Middle East. He understands very well the cost that this is going to bring to the American standing in the world as a whole, and in the Middle East in particular. And I don't know, I mean, I don't think the way he's handling it is clear to everyone around the world. I mean, he's talking about a board of peace that he's going to chair. But in fact, he's not talking about Gaza, about the board, and this is where Tony Blair is getting involved. Their idea is this board is for the peace in the whole Middle East. It ranges all the way from Israel, Lebanon, Turkey, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Gulf states, and they have this big vision where he's going to end 3,000 years of conflict. Of course, we can question his history credentials in the 3,000 years. But that announcement have confused people. So people now talk about him coming to run Gaza or Tony Blair. I don't think that's in the plan. What's in the plan is a technocratic group of Palestinians who are going to govern, and Hamas having agreed to not have any role in the governance of Gaza. Now, beyond that, I don't think there's been any detail worked out.
Thank you. Hassan, just final point. It is undoubtable that the international community has failed the people of Gaza for not just the last 2 years, for a very, very long time?
Unfortunately, Palestinians have got used to the fact that the international community continues to fail them. This was not the first event. We're talking about a struggle that has been there for 100 years. I'm Palestinian myself. I'm a fourth generation who has been living this. My great-grandfather lived this as well. And it's likely that it's going to go on for some time. If the international community is serious, and here I'm talking about particular states that are maintaining the situation, they are not silence, they are complicit. If these states do not start distancing them from Israel, all that we're seeing is just sweet talks from the states, which does not reflect, if we're talking about the international community as the people are being very loud and very clear. The people in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, in North America, they're being very clear. We saw the student encampment in the United States. But the states are risking so much by standing with Israel, the same way the European states risked so much by listening to Hitler and thinking that Hitler is going to stop in Czechoslovakia in 1938. We ended up with a devastating war that wiped out so much of humanity. And right now Netanyahu has taken it upon himself to continue this mission.
Alanna O'Malley, Sultan Barakat and Hassan Ben Imran, thank you all so much. Remember, if you want more debate and discussion, just head to YouTube and search for TRT World and look for Roundtable. And if you like what you see there, do hit that subscribe button. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, by the banks of the Bosphorus here in Istanbul, thank you for watching.